Hi, and welcome to the second Aperture PhotoBook Club. We are so glad you are all here virtually, and I am particularly glad with everyone who's joining me in my living room. You have been very helpful to us. We asked some questions after the last time. You gave us lots of helpful feedback, and this includes that now we're going to have the chat on for the whole program, for the whole time we're talking. What that means is that you can use the chat to tell us where you're tuning in from, anything else that you want everybody to see, but the place for questions is in the Q&A. So put your questions in the Q&A. Aperture, what's Aperture? Aperture was founded almost 70 years ago as an organization that was dedicated to serious thinking in photography. At first, that was through our quarterly magazine, and for the last 50 years or even more, it's been about thinking of the book as a platform for artists' voices. And that is kind of what brings us here today. So what we'll do is we'll begin with a few more thank yous. I want to thank Clark and the production crew for Candle Productions for bringing us all together. It's quite spectacular. I want to thank Ingram Content Group for their sponsorship of the Aperture PhotoBook Club and their support of so much of what we do. I want to thank my Aperture colleagues who are all waiting in the wings and really being super helpful in ways that you can't even imagine. And I also want to thank our guests. So let's start with you, Sophie. Everyone's going to introduce themselves. Start with you, Sophie.
I'm Sophie Mörner. I'm the founder of Capricious Publishing and Capricious Photo Award.
Great. I'm Farah Al Qasimi. I am an artist and a teacher.
I'm Alex Lin. I'm the founder of Studio Lin, a graphic design studio in Gowanus, Brooklyn.
I'm Anika Sabin. I'm the executive director of Capricious Foundation.
All right, great. So now that we have the introductions out of the way, maybe we'll start with you, Sophie, and you tell us a little bit about Capricious and about this award, what's bringing us all together.
Well, I started Capricious magazine actually in 2003, and it slowly developed into publishing in 2006. And I published the magazine, maybe it was once a year. It was all photography, emerging photographers, new photographers, and to really, because there was no magazine for just fine art photography. So, and that I did to 2016, where I felt like the whole nature of photography had changed so much with Instagram and so on. So we started, and then me and Anika was also working together at that point, for some years actually at that point already. And I then started Capricious Photo Award, which is, I just felt that magazines didn't live as long as I wanted them to, and books live forever. And I think that is really like crucial with the book award or photo award, that this book, like Farah's book, will live forever. And you're the third book that we made, and yeah, it's been really amazing to work with you, but that's more about that later. And so Capricious Photo Award is for emerging photographers. It's an international award that gives the funding and the editorial and financial support to make a book, either about like one project or a whole body of work or a whole practice.
And so, Farah, you applied for this award with a body of work. Do you want to sort of tell us what you were maybe hoping it might be, or how you were pitching yourself?
I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted the book to be necessarily, but I did want it to feel like my favorite childhood book growing up, which was this tiny little book called The Jolly Postman, and it's like about a British postman who travels from house to house, and you can look at the mail in like each, in each story, you can like fold out a postcard, or you look at like a catalog for a witch who's buying cauldrons, or like you look at a, like a vacation postcard for all these fairy tale characters. And it was really silly, but it was so playful, and it felt like your own because you could sort of like touch it,
was like
and
Pat the
move things
Bunny,
around.
but for slightly older people.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I feel like I want something really playful that matches the energy of the work, but I didn't have any visualization of what that could be until we started talking to Alex. So it feels really special and amazing that we were able to carry some of that energy into the book.
So Alex, maybe you'll tell us a little bit about, like, what did you, this is your third Capricious award that you've designed the books for, but what was different about Farah's work that you were like, and maybe you can show us, we can also, well, you can show us things if you'd prefer, or.
Yeah, I've been working with Capricious since 2016, and it's always been like a super interesting journey, every single book. And at the beginning of each process, like, we don't know what the book is gonna be like at all, like zero kind of, and that's part of the fun is like, through discussions, through our own research, through just like looking at stuff, through like trying to kind of channel the energy of the artist, like something comes out of that. And, there's always like a timeline, and, within that timeline, you can always, you'll get to a certain point and it has to be done. Books, otherwise we could just kind of go on with ideas forever. So, each book has this constraint of the timeline, as well as like all different factors. We're always trying to make a book that only works for that particular artist. Like, that's probably one of the major goals for each of these projects.
You want to tell us like a little bit of an example of something about this book that you feel like couldn't have been it for? I have a whole laundry list,
yeah.
but I'd rather hear it from you.
Definitely the stickers, the kind of incorporation of the stickers. I think from the very beginning we were always, I think stickers even came up in our first meeting somehow. I sort of remember, and so stickers were always kind of on our mind throughout the process, but I don't think we arrived at the final solution until the very end, because we were struggling with like, how do we introduce stickers without it feeling extraneous or like too kitschy or gimmicky. And I think one of the things that happened, we were looking closely at possible images for the cover, and I don't remember who in the studio. Stephanie was working on this at the time, and so was Sue Chen, and I don't quite remember who said it. Might have been me, I don't know. It doesn't even matter, but we were like, oh, like this image, like these plates are like perfect stickers. Like each of these elements in the photo can be isolated and be stickers. And we're like, oh, like maybe we can just kiss cut them. And then that way it's
Sorry, for those lay people among us, do you want to say what kiss cutting is? Because that was a word I learned from you. So
sure, it's so like, this is a sheet of sticker material. You can peel it off and so kiss cutting is when they use a die, like a metal die, like with a thin kind of outline, and they stamp it. It sounds like amazing, but somehow they stamp it enough to where like it only goes through the adhesive stuff so that you can peel off individual things. Kissed. Yeah, exactly. It's kissed. Somehow they can do it, but anyway, that's kind of where we got the idea, and then we kind of drew each of these elements in Farah's work in the photographs, so like each of these elements can be lifted off and become a sticker.
And I have to say, it's been so incredible to see how people have customized their covers, but also that people have taken the stickers and sort of run with them. Because somebody at company has my feet on their laptop because my feet are in the upper left corner of the image. But this one's very linear, this interpretation of the stickers. I've seen people really layer them on. I've seen people say, I don't want to touch it.
I know, I live with anxiety. All right.
Yeah, but this is I like this bookmark. You did a good job on this.
No, I can take no credit. I really, Anika, this seems like a good time to ask you, what do you do with respect to all of this?
Right, so with Sophie, we work with Farah in terms of the editing, and then in terms of collaborating with Alex, just making sure that we are listening fully to the vision of the artist, and also that everything is within the timeline and budget and all of that. So, yeah. But I also, when you were saying we hadn't kind of figured out what the stickers would be until the end, I mean, it really was like this light bulb moment, because we all were kind of thinking, yes, stickers would be a really nice addition because it kind of allows the reader to kind of I don't know, in terms of layering and the way that image and object get recontextualized in your work, the reader can kind of it's kind of a performance of that action. It's it's kind of a really beautiful internal readjustment, like looking into Farah's work, and it's a reperformance of what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it's really an interesting, almost psychological test. It's like that I haven't yet been able to take a copy on the sticker. We'll analyze that later. I think, though, it's worth explaining a little bit more about this cover. So it's one long sheet of sticker, like this. So.
Can I just say one more thing about the process of Alex working with the artist? I love how you always, after the first initial meeting with artists, you send them home with a homework of give you 10 books, 10 of their favorite books, 10 of their favorite fonts, colors. You send them with a whole list of homework, and then that also gives so much. I think it's such a beautiful way of working because that gives you the artist to really think about what a dream book would look like. Yeah. And I think that's how we also very often, in combination with your work and all that, end up with these books that are very individual. So I just wanted to add that note to it.
That's a great insight into the process because all right, but to return to anyway, would you rather talk about that? We could talk. Okay. I don't care what we talk about first. But I'll say, so these are 4 stickers plus some very, very mini ones that if you're paying attention, you can find in the book that I found that enjoyable. But I would love to ask Anika and Sophie, it's a pretty daring, and then here's the rest of it is an invitation to say, put your stickers here, or here, or here, or here, and nowhere do you see Farah's name except. Okay, fine. Okay, fine.
I was like,
it's there somewhere.
But the
that was
ISB
actually a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how did that conversation go?
No, the name has to be on the book, right?
Well, you're right.
Yeah, I think at a certain point we actually discussed it, and I was like, I don't really care as long as it's in there somewhere. But I think we really wanted the cover to feel like this blank slate that people could address. And I remember we talked about putting an image on the cover, but we were like, no, if we do that, people aren't going to really take the plunge and make it their own. And part of I think a lot of our decisions were informed by the work and thinking about how much there are literal mirrors in the work, but also how much, I want people to sort of seek themselves in the images. And so it felt like we went through these different iterations of more traditional book covers, but I think we all were really excited by just doing something kind of daring and really making people, maybe you will one day, but yeah, it's sort of
I'll be the ideal reader this week.
Yeah, or you can have the archival copy and then the table copy.
It's true, although I think it's good. It helps you overcome things that you might not have. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I wasn't realizing it was on the spine. Because I was thinking to myself, wow, that's pretty daring as a publisher to sort of say your ISBN number is going to be on a little bookmark that's tucked inside. And, it's not, the image is beguiling. So I don't know how this affects book sales or how you, think about that. But there's not, other than the attraction of the image, one might argue that it's, as a business decision, Farah's name could help. I don't know how you weigh those things.
Well, I think this is what Farah wanted, so then that's what you do.
But that's not what everyone does.
And also the sticker paper really it is meant to be an impermanent addition to it. You really are supposed to take it off.
All right, so I shouldn't worry that my edges are getting crumpled?
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I also really enjoyed this because, there is within art books and photo books, this fetishization of the art book and to keep it pristine and clean and kind of ask people to engage with it in this way of like taking apart the cover. I enjoy
She's
it.
doing
All right,
it.
I'm
She's doing it.
inspired.
She's
I'm
doing it.
inspired. Ready? I'm ruining my
What's
cover.
the first
But
one?
It's my first one. Well, I thought
Yeah,
it's
what
like
did
a
it
little.
say?
It's a little candy.
It's the Ferrero Rochers. Those are like every Arab has them in their home.
I'm gonna save the feet for my computer now that I know that I can not only put that you've inspired me.
So honored.
But that. Okay, first one done. Now I feel like I can do anything.
Yeah, if you need advising, I'm here. But to Anika's point, though, which is really important, I think we also talked about the preciousness of the object and how it was more important for people to feel like it was theirs, and that it was like something that they could and should handle. And you know, one of the first photo books that I really fell in love with was this book by Takashi Yasumura that only has an image on the cover. You know, and I think that the name and title of the book are on the side in Japanese, but I don't read Japanese, so it was the cover that drew me to that book. So I really speak in images, and so this felt like a good decision that I don't know is true to the work. And I think they are shrink wrapped with the bookmark out, so you can see my name somewhere. But I also like the idea of just being confronted by a spine of like a bunch of little stickers and having to dig deeper.
So maybe we'll talk a little bit. I've been wondering about the decision to print some of your pictures in blue and what that signifies. So including the first one that's in blue, of course, is where the title of the book is drawn from, and I'll show that. So we start here from Hello Future. And maybe we'll spend 1 second before we get into the blue. How did you choose a title?
It's from that image. It's a cell phone store down the street from the house that my family lives in Abu Dhabi, and it says, actually in Arabic, it's Alu al-Mustaqbal, which is hello the future. But hello future is how they translated it here. So it just seemed perfect. I think a lot of the work is about aspiration. It's about how people translate capitalist desires on a personal level and how they surround themselves with these objects of ambition or dreams. And so it just felt right to take the text directly from an image.
But you knew, was there any disagreement? You all knew it was going to be called Hello Future from the, yeah. Okay.
It was considering how hard of a time I usually have titling things, this one was actually really easy.
It works beautifully. And then just to give an example of another, these appear at irregular intervals. I would say there are about 16 of them in the book or something like that. Will you tell us a little bit about the decision to do that? I don't know which one of you was responsible.
I think it's a response. Farah, you had like a clear, distinct body of images that were called research, I think, at the time. And when we got the files, it was super cool because the files had like a time. They were like named. Yeah. The name of the image file was like a date and a specific time. And that was like so cool to us because it was like we had that information and that can become part of the book. So each of those research images has like a date and a time stamp, I assume from when they were taken. Yeah. And then the decision to print them in cyan. Cyan is one of the 4 printing colors.
Sorry for calling it blue.
No, it's okay. It's cyan is blue anyway. But it's one of the 4 printing colors, and if you choose that color, it doesn't cost any extra to print that color in the rest of the book. And it's like a color that you can't really go wrong with. It's like a beautiful pure cyan. And the other kind of thing that helped us decide on this color is we, looking at some of the images, I think there was an image of like a faded, like a faded poster somewhere, like in an old dusty window. And what happens with these, like the ink, for whatever reason, like all the colors except for blue like stay after it's been faded. So we thought that was like an interesting kind of reference to this like dusty old like inkjet print in like a old store window or something.
Yeah, like a barbershop.
Right, exactly.
Like where they show all the different kinds of fades you could get.
Yes.
Or yeah, I mean, like cyan is the ink that has the most staying power. So when you walk past a window and all the products have been there for like 60 years, you're gonna see, they're all gonna be blue.
These blue posters. So which was that we wanted to kind of reference that aspect of it.
So this is a question from Eric that's come in, thankfully through the Q&A. Thanks, Eric. He asks, can you tell us about how you sequenced the work? So I don't know how many pictures you submitted for the original portfolio and from what it was drawn, but will you tell us a little bit about that?
Definitely not as many as are in the book. It was actually a really fun process. We got together in Company's old space, and
Company's the gallery that's also an extension of Capricious originally. So.
Yes. But Anika had printed out all of the images, and we sat.
So what are we talking about?
Hundreds.
Hundreds,
right?
I think.
I mean, there's 300 pages in the book. A lot of images.
And then all the research images.
All the research, which is just a way for me to sort of like feel less guilty about taking so many iPhone photos. But yeah, we sat down and we sort of organized everything on the floor. It was just like a beautiful mess, and we kind of intuitively came up with these pairings based on themes in the work that were sort of divided by the blue images. And I should say that this award came at possibly the best time because I was so miserable during the pandemic, and I got the email and I was like, I was third wheeling my brother and his wife, who are really wonderful, and I couldn't have asked for better companions, but I had lost a lot of my show opportunities that were coming up, and I had just taken a self-appointed sabbatical as an adjunct teacher at the time, and didn't really have a lot to put my energy into, and was feeling really sort of depressed, as many of us were. And so to be able to have something physical to put my energy into, the timing of it was just so wonderful. And I remember that moment was really exciting, because to see all of the physical work in this space, and to actually think through how to sequence it was more intuitive than anything else, but it was also like, it had all of this pent-up energy behind it. So I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but it felt really nice to just like be in a space working with other people.
Yeah, and it was so intuitive also. And also you're so connected with your work, so it was like really easy to kind of follow your lead, I think.
I think it definitely tethered us through the second year of the pandemic. So, yeah.
So how did you decide also the text that, Nagar's text, which I think both of the texts, an interview with you and Nagar's text, how did you decide what you wanted, where did that come from?
I think we knew that we wanted one text that was a little bit more formal and one that was more playful, and that had my voice in it, but a little bit more conversationally. And Mariam Banani, who I have the conversation with, is a brilliant artist, one of my favorite artists and people. And even though her work is in a very different medium, we really share a lot of ideas about sort of like geography and the internet, and we have a mutual love for cartoons. So yeah, SpongeBob. We very much share a love for SpongeBob. So that felt like a really natural fit, and we did the interview in 2 parts. And then Nagar is also a dear friend who commissioned me to make a video piece for Badoon, which is the platform that she started with some other amazing people. So we have a history of being in conversation already, and there are also 2 people who really understand some of the issues in my work that relate to trying to transcend a specific geography and really trying to make work that is globally significant in a way, or deals with global issues, but we often get pigeonholed to sort of being from a certain part of the world or making work that is of a certain part of the world, even though it's just one small part of it. So it felt like they were people who I really wanted to have represented in the book as voices.
So mostly from you. Do you all feel like often artists know with that kind of clarity what sort of text they want, or it seems sort of rare?
Sometimes.
Okay.
But yeah, we got very lucky. I think, coming into the project, it was very clear what you did want, and you know yourself and your work very deeply in a way that is rare. So
thank you.
It was truly a pleasure.
So you want to talk about one of your favorite things in the book, maybe, Anika? Something
Sure.
it's something that we haven't discussed yet.
I think actually just going off, one of my favorite things was actually listening and then editing down sort of this conversation with Miriam, and I just love the entry point where they have a history of sending images of SpongeBob in different sort of iterations, and I think that's kind of just a perfect metaphor of this sort of like transcending geography and this kind of cultural migration between, so that was definitely gave me a nice understanding of the work as well, just a whole new perspective on that. And I also just love SpongeBob also. So it was, I think that was...
He's so lovable.
Yeah.
It was one of the more in-depth analyses of SpongeBob, like what he means as a mirror and as the personality. I don't think I had fully appreciated.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to offer to psychoanalyze me, but definitely something to do with just well-meaning, and he's relatable and his form is appealing.
What does that mean?
I mean, it's like I like when I doodle a lot, and like when I doodle, I always draw cubes because it's easy. Anyone can draw
Because
cubes,
it's
right?
easy, right?
So like you can draw a SpongeBob, and so people make a lot of cakes out of SpongeBob because it's just a rectangle. So that was how we started talking about SpongeBob cakes, and and how his form is just it's easy. It's easier than like Spider-Man.
I couldn't draw Spider-Man, but I could draw SpongeBob.
There, you could probably draw SpongeBob.
Right, I probably could.
Yeah, my son is gonna be SpongeBob for Halloween.
Inspired in part by this book, or?
No, he watches SpongeBob like every day, after school. So,
So
he's very easy to make too. It's like
Alex, other than the stickers, is there do you have a favorite image in the book, or is there?
Yeah, I mean, when I got the email from Capricious about like who won the prize, it like every time it's like I'm just blown away by like who gets picked, the level of talent, and like this time we're like, oh my God, these images are so insane. Like, how are they like? My mind was blown. I was like, how can anyone take images like? I just couldn't understand it, So.
It's a good place to start. You're so I can't understand it. I know I need to make a book of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like, on one hand, it's like amazing because it's like we don't have to do anything. Like the content is already like you could just print out all the images really well, and then it's like that's all you need. But on the other hand, there is a lot of pressure to kind of figure out what is really special about the photographer, like what is really, really unique, and how do you materialize that? I think my favorite image would be the one where there's like a steak and like dogs.
Oh
and
yeah,
the dog?
Piper the dog.
Yes. Do you know
Yeah,
what?
I don't know where in the book that is.
I
but,
think I can.
yeah, that dog just recently passed away, but she was such a
Oh, yes,
sweetheart.
this one.
Yeah, Piper.
And part
We
of
have
the
that as a
reason
dog
is
show,
like,
yeah.
was this Kansas or something? It was
Texas.
like Texas,
Texas,
yeah.
baby, yeah.
And it's like, it's just incredible how like you can't place this. It's like, it's hard to place this like in context of all the other images. And the caption tells you so much. It's like so surprising when you read the caption in relation to the image because of like location, because of like stereotypes, because of all these other kind of things. But yeah, I mean, I would say this image was the most, I mean, it was so striking. Like the dog's eyes are like red, and it's just, it's so powerful and it's so beautiful. It's really amazing.
Will you tell a little bit about how you decided where the caption should go, because they aren't near the pictures?
Yes, exactly.
And actually, the idea of an illustrated checklist at the back, which it's not even just it's not even it's the captions plus the reference images, which I think is very generous to readers, or I felt that way when yeah, here, I'll hold it up so you can talk about it, Alex.
I think partially was because of that image, it kind of strengthened the idea of like the surprise of like, because the caption tells you more about the image, and without the caption, the image can be a certain thing. You know,
so
it's
what
like
do
playing
you want to
with,
tell everyone what the caption is for this image?
what
Or
was
here, I'm looking at it right now. 70.
It's Piper.
Oh, Piper at a
yeah.
barbecue in Houston.
Yes, yeah. So that's like, these images can be taken anywhere, like anywhere on the globe. Like it's just, and I think part of what makes the work so incredible is that I think you play with that. You really play with expectations of like image and location and things like that. So part of the reason why we kept the captions away from the images is that there is a surprise that you get from reading the captions with the images. Like there's an added level of information that is provided. So.
Exactly. And you know, that image, when I first showed it 5 years ago, somebody walked into the gallery and said, "Oh, so this is the Middle East, right?"
Yeah.
And it was really amazing to me that that assumption could be made about a photograph of guns when
Right.
I grew up in the United Arab Emirates and I didn't see a gun until I moved to America,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, yeah.
So, but it is exactly that, you know, sort of playing with people's assumptions and playing with how they're coded to read images.
Right.
But also, you said one of the most generous things that anyone's ever said about my work, so thank you. And I want to tell you that one of the best questions I've ever gotten about it was when I gave a talk to my one of my friends' photography classes, and I talked about, you know, individual photographs, I talked about my practice, and then at the end someone said, "So, where do you get the money to build all your sets?"
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was like, should I redo the talk? But it was,
Crazy.
yeah, it was amazing to me that, like, you know, and that's what I love about photo books specifically, because, you know, I can't get that from a book of paintings, like knowing how other people see the world in a way that's so particular and so different to mine, but being able to enter that, I feel like is a really magical thing that, that only photo books can do for me, and I can't always go out and see shows, so. So having that and then being able to sort of have those experiences around how the book is made is really special.
All right, so there's a question that's come in about video stills. And I think I love, maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about the contents of the book as a whole, because it privileges the still photographs and it begins with that and that, but it also, sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry, and then the follow-up question is, where can we see your videos? But what I love about the book is that it starts with the photographs, and then it goes into video stills, and maybe, Alex, you'll tell us a little bit about like how you decided to represent the videos, because it's not a natural marriage to see a video on the printed page, and then the illustrated checklist, and then the synopses of the video, too. I don't know who wrote those.
But that was a combination of me and Capricious.
They're very helpful, and you rarely see 8-line. Anyway, I thought so. It feels as if this book was made to help guide you through the work, to give you first the sort of joy of looking through it without any caption or anything, and then in the back, you also get your installation views of a handful of exhibitions. So you really begin to sort of say, first you just fall into the image, and then unlayered in the back of the book are these other things. So I don't know, maybe we'll start with you, Farah. Like, was it important to you to have all of that in there? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, photography is it is the most important part of my practice, but it's not the only part of my practice. And it's often the thing or the medium from which other things spring and grow into other dimensions. And so I think it helps to guide people through some of the thought processes that are a little bit more internal or a little bit more fictional, like the Manar, the longer video piece that's about a spirit who is losing her powers to scare people. So all of that is really important, even though it's not necessarily truthful. in the way that a lot of my work is. But then there's also like the relationship to space and how I play with space in exhibitions, like using layered vinyl, or the project that I did with Public Art Fund that was specifically in advertising spaces around New York City. So I think context is really important to the work. I like that you can see it, completely on its own, but then you can see how it exists in the world physically and how it is about the layering of space and world building as a general project.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I've always loved when I encounter your work in the real world is, and maybe actually the Public Art Fund project and the book are the two that are least like that, but the way you adapt an image to its sort of optimal scale, and it feels as if you're really attending to what it means to be a human being in front of one of your photographs, and the uniformity, I guess, of the scale in a photo book or on a Public Art Fund bus stop becomes something totally different but equally, anyway, it's something I enjoy. But why don't you tell us where you can? So the back of the book includes, before the checklist, these very helpful spreads of video stills. You want to tell us a little bit about where people can go, other than the Badoon? That one is great. I looked at it over the weekend, so I know that's easily accessible.
That is easily accessible. Because the rest of the videos are really dependent on how they exist in physical space and have installation components to them, they're usually only viewable in specific timed screenings as part of programs or in exhibitions as part of exhibitions. So that's a part of making videos that I'm new to, because I do, the sort of Democrat in me wants everybody to have access to them all the time, but I also think it's important to really have context and space be a part of that viewing experience. So you can see a lot of them if you're in Abu Dhabi right now, which I don't think you are because it's in the middle of the night there. But,
sorry.
But one of them, Umanat, is screening in Toronto soon. And then I have a new video work that's going to be screening in LA as part of a show I'm doing with Francois Rabali next month. But the rest of them are in private Vimeo links. So if you know me personally, text me for a link.
You're going to regret saying that. Sophie, do you have a favorite picture in the book or a favorite part of it?
No, but you know what's so incredible with this book is the weight of this book. Mm-hmm. Like there's something like, not only like how it opens, when you do photography books, it's like, I think it's so important that it like open flat. You can really see like all of the image. But
can you tell people also how you make it open flat? Because I don't think everybody...
It's about the spine, the binding.
Yeah. It's called Smythe Zone, and they sew like the signatures together. It's kind of
I don't think you can see it,
but
it's when you can see kind of it almost like it really literally is sewn.
Yes, yeah, versus glued. When it's glued, it doesn't open so well.
So this book opens, but it's like the paper that we ended up using, and the smell of the book and the weight of the book is like, and the size is like something about that. Like, I love Farah's work, I love Farah's work, so I can talk about so many images, but I really, really love that part of the book, like how it also connects to what you look at, because that connection is really important, the experience of actually looking at this, this specific image and holding it also in your hands is for me has always been bookmaking has been so much about the experience also. So, and I love the video stills. It's I love that we have that in there and think that's so crucial also for your practice.
Yeah.
So, and so that's hard for me to say. My favorite image. So many. It's the goats.
If you had many children, you would have the same problem.
But Alex also came up with a really great system for sort of standardizing how to show the video works, even though, because they really vary in length. But I think we decided on a set number of stills each, just at different intervals of time. And I think that works really well.
We got a question for the publishers.
Oh, the question for the publishers. were there any challenges in printing the work, bringing all of these colors, and there are a lot of different colors in this book, together consistently?
Yeah. Well, I think most of the challenge that we had was just the fact that we were in a global pandemic and that there were shipping delays and that we were working with a printer in Singapore. So Alex and I would at midnight, we would have meetings with them and go through the proofing, and there would be 3 weeks in between actually receiving physical proof. So I think that was kind of the major challenge, is kind of running back and forth between the printer to really get that precise color. Yeah.
And what were you testing it against? So in other words, for people who can't imagine what it means to get a color right in a book, what does that mean? Obviously with the cyan ones, I'm never going to call them blue again. It's one thing, but for something like this, how do you do it?
Well, we did have several match prints, and also Farah was very involved with approving the color for each image. So,
but do you try to do it like under certain lighting circumstances, or do you accept daylight as a?
Yeah,
daylight
is the one.
Yeah.
But also, like, you're really, since you're a photographer, like, you really know what you want them to look like.
Yeah.
I think that's like the beauty of making photography books, because most photographers have really strong connection to how they want that to be. I think it's different when you make other books. It's harder to what do you think this looks right?
Right, well, because I think there's the illusion or the possibility that a photograph can look like, a photograph rendered as a photograph can look like a photograph on a printed page, when in fact they also can be quite different. Do you ever sort of enjoy that, Farah? Like the idea of the possibility of how a photograph can look on the page that's different from how you might print it or use it in an installation?
Yeah, I mean, it's shinier on the page. It's lighter, I think, but most importantly, it's the size that you can enter, which, not that exhibition prints aren't, but it's different when you can get this close. Like, nobody except jerks are going to a photography show and going like, ugh, because they're like, there's a scratch, or they didn't mount that properly.
Wait, jerks are curators? Sorry.
Ooh, sorry if I just called all curators jerks, but, I feel like it is very different. I think like the thinness of it makes it easy to handle, but it's not, I think like the paperweight still carries a lot of that color really well. But yeah, I think all of it really comes down to the book being something that is yours. And you've now made yours yours.
By the way, I did realize that I've made mine.
Yeah,
but
you did.
Because I was doing it live, this is maybe kind of perfect, I did it upside down. So what I thought I was doing on the book, I was like, oh yeah. And then I realized I did it upside down, which actually might make me love it
like that.
all the more.
Yeah.
So are there any, Brendan, you want to tell us if there are any questions from the audience in the Q&A that we should take? And I will say there are lots of people tuning in from many time zones that are different from ours. So from Brazil, France, Canada, and UAE.
Wow, good morning.
That's a good effort. That's a very good effort. And it looks like there's one. So we'll let Brendan tell us what one of the last questions is, unless there's anything else that you all feel like we haven't covered sufficiently. I had one question while we're waiting for that to be typed in. I want to know, you said you really liked Farah's work. Is it sometimes hard, you have a jury that chose Farah to be the winner of this award. Is it hard, how can you tell us a little bit about that process, like the conversation that settled on Farah, and is it hard to withhold your own personal opinions, or how does that go?
I mean, I think since our jury has been varying from 8 to 10 people, depending on the year. So everybody votes, and then we meet and talk, and then during the pandemic we had a Zoom conversation. But I think that, sometimes someone's fighting for one person and someone's fighting for another, and I think that's just part of the process, and I really enjoyed that. And when it came to Farah, it was very, what is that word? Unanimous. And it also you can kind of sense when someone's ready for a book. And Farah definitely like, I mean, you made books before, like smaller books, I think, and but it really was like, yeah, it was like so clear for that year. So.
Well, I
Don't you
agree.
think?
So maybe this time, the question from the Q&A was, what were some of your favorite photo books growing up or as a student? And you can either answer that, or you could say to Alex's question of what photo books that you liked. You can answer either question you like.
I don't remember what books I brought. I think because we were still in the initial conversations, we were still very much doing everything online. But definitely that book that I mentioned earlier. I think also I didn't really discover photography until college, so I don't know if I'd say growing up I had any favorite photo books, but definitely the catalog for the MoMA show, The Pleasures and Terrors of Domestic Comfort, is a favorite. I bought it when I was maybe a junior or senior in college, and it was just amazing to see the possibilities of what photography in a domestic setting could be, especially because I was spending so much time at home in the years after college.
It's a pretty unassuming book too. It's thin, it's paperback, it feels like a good entry.
It's a good entry. I mean, there's a lot of images in it, which I always like. This is an Aperture book, but I love Latoya Ruby Fraser's notion of family, just the way that text is dealt with in that book and the way it's so expansive. And I'm always buying used Barbara Morgan books because I love her. I love the way that she treated photo books. Like some of them are more formal, some of them sort of feel like zines. But I will say my favorite category of photo book is a used one, because I like books that are aged. I like books that I don't have to feel too precious.
You would take mine even with the stickers applied upside down?
I absolutely would, and it would be even more special because it would have passed through somebody else's creative process.
I have to say, I love a used book is a great category of
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So there are people asking Capricious, if someone feels ready, that they have a body of work that deserves to be thought of as a book, is it an open process or how does it work?
Yeah, so right now it's closed, but we'll be opening up again in the next year to submissions, and you just kind of submit your portfolio and artist statement, anything like that. Yeah.
So the next announcement, so after Farah's.
Yes, so we'll be announcing the next recipient likely in May, late May. Yep.
We will stay tuned.
Yes.
Maybe we'll even include it in a Aperture PhotoBook Club newsletter so that people can. And one of the things that doesn't really matter to me at all, but I understand matters to some people who collect photo books, is that you all held aside a certain number of copies of the book from the first printing. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think, first of all, thank you for extending the discount. That was not necessary. We appreciate it. Everyone has, I think, a couple more days to use the PhotoBook Club discount to buy the book. But you tell me how that works.
Well, actually, I believe that the first edition is now
all gone.
Closed.
Okay, sorry.
But we are doing pre-order for the second edition at this point. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm happy for all of you. And then maybe the last question is for Farah and for Alex. Can you tell us about your inspiration in terms of materials, either in your images or bookmaking? Anchor it. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm going to love that it's upside down forever and ever. But will you talk a little bit? And Farah, you can, if you don't mind, I think even the materials in terms of the installation views, how you decide to print something and put it on the walls.
Yeah. A lot of it is about bringing you into some of the spaces, physical or psychic, that the work is set in. So that image that you're on right now is a photograph that I took of the inside of a haunted palace. That whole series was kind of about. Yeah.
But not the. In other words, just to help people understand what they're looking
So
at.
Basically, it's printed vinyl with framed photographs on top. And so it's like a wallpaper, but then you also have these sort of framed images that act as windows. So for me, there's I think part of the part of my process in exhibitions and with the book was thinking about how to bring the sort of physical materiality of space into an image, which is two-dimensional. So you know, in a context like that, it's all about layering and it's all about scale. But maybe Alex can speak more about the book.
Yeah, I think I'd love to ask you, Farah, the choice of the chrome frames in this exhibition.
Yeah. I've actually been using those since that exhibition that was at Helena Anrather right before the lockdown. I like that you can see yourself. It's brushed aluminum, and you can actually physically see yourself on the edges of the frame. So it's sort of like an extension of you in the image, which again relates to the idea of using the chrome for the book.
Right, and that's as part of our kind of book making research or like sleuthing, we're always looking at like how you represent your work like in a physical space. And I think like after we saw how like incredible the chrome finish was like next to your images, we're like, we have to use this material somehow like in the book. And so that's how the
end papers and the cover.
That's how this came about, I think. But it's literally from like looking at like Google images of this exhibition.
Because you didn't get to see it because of the pandemic, or?
Yeah, I think it was, I never got to see the show, but just like all the images of, you know, this like chrome next to the photos is just like such a perfect match, you know.
I mean, I think you did an amazing job with the stickers and the chrome of sort of looking at the work and letting the design emerge from that. It is part of what makes it such a distinctive, you know, only Farah. This book couldn't be anyone else's. And the one last question. The question is, what did your family think of the book? Are they into it? You know, I mean, how could they not be? But anyway, we'll still.
I will say my mom is incredibly supportive of my work, and she immediately pre-ordered like 10 copies and sent them to everyone in my family. It was really funny. I was staying with my aunt in New Jersey on Sunday, and I was sitting in the computer room, and it was so funny because I looked in the corner, I was like, oh my God, there's my book, you know, and then on the coffee table is like another copy of the book. So it's really sweet because they're really proud of it, and you know, my work and my practice would be nothing without my family. So they're very supportive. I think they're really excited about it, and my nieces and nephews are really excited about the stickers.
Well, that's awesome. I would be very excited. I was excited actually I pre-ordered my copy too, and even though I'm not a family member, so I think I can imagine lots of people would feel the same way. So thank you all. Wow, what another fun photo book club. I learned so much. I'm grateful to you all for being with me. Grateful to everyone for tuning in from all over the world, including very early in the morning and very late at night. And as before, we're still figuring all this out, so your candid feedback is very welcome. Let us know. You can write to us at photobookclub@aperture.org. Pretty sure that's right. And we also wanted to mention that if we could, pre-plug a couple of things. We want to pre-plug our next gathering of the Aperture PhotoBook Club, which is we're usually going for the last the last Wednesday of every month. What day is it? But Robert Adams is going to join us on Sunday, May 15th. And actually just by phone, but it's still pretty magical. So Robert Adams and Sarah Greeno and I are going to have a conversation where Sarah and I are here and Bob is calling in. So that is on Sunday, May 15th at 6 p.m. Please join us. And we also wanted to mention that Alex, you're designing an upcoming Aperture book, the second iteration of the Aperture Baxter Street Camera Club of New York Next Step Award with Tommy Ka. And so you want to tell us how that's coming along?
Yeah, it's, again, it was like such a privilege to kind of, you know, be asked to help design this book. And
you can imagine why we were inspired.
Thanks. And it's coming along well. I think it's about 70% designed. And it's been like a really good process, and we've been through several meetings where we have like little tiny thumbnails of Tommy's work and just kind of like these working meetings. So it's going well.
All right, great. Well, maybe we'll do another photo book club of that someday. It can happen. I think we know the people involved. We can bring us together. So really, thank you all. Thank you, Ingram Content Group, again, for sponsoring us. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all my Aperture colleagues for making this so smooth. And we'll see you on Sunday, May 15th for Robert Adams.